Hemshech Ayin Beis, Volume 1. We're in the middle of chapter 225. The top of page Tov Nun Vav, which would be 556. We're in the middle of Maimer 56. 456, right. 456. I'm glad we have an accountant in the house. Yeah. It's Maimer 50, middle of Maimer 56. Hashem Amar HaMachase. Fascinating discussion. Let me just to sum up. In the context of the whole Hemshech Ayin Beis interface, so an interface requires that two, existence and the divine, come together. So an interface needs something from existence and something from the divine. In Kabbalah, namely the Arizal, he established that's Keser. The Rebbe Rashab built a whole case to explain not just Keser, it's within Keser, what element is it? Chochmas Tima. We call unconscious, I like superconscious intelligence, which is Chochma on one hand, but Stima on the other, meaning it's beyond us, beyond conscious awareness. And he explained that there's two levels in Chochmas Tima. One level is Helam Legabe Makablim, which means what he calls Koyach HaMaskil. It's the Makar HaSeichel. So when an idea falls into your head, you sense it came from somewhere. Where it come from? That's the lower level of Chochmas Tima. Consider that Meichus Tima of Arich. Then there's a deeper level of Meichus Tima, and that's Meicha the Atik. That's Sasim Be'etzim. It's not, you can't call it Makar HaSeichel, because it's fundamentally concealed. In other words, even when it comes into Gili, it still remains beyond. So here you have, in Chochmas Tima, two dimensions. He compared it to understanding that in Chochma itself and Chochma Glubi also have two dimensions. Chochma is understanding something and bringing it down in explanation, and Chochma is Hafla, the wow, the awe. You know, when you like say, wow, that's a great idea. They're both conscious, but one, it borders on the conscious already looking up to something greater, and the other is conscious as it goes down and explains it in more details. So Chochmas Tima, in a completely different dimension, has similar two elements. So in the unconscious, in the superconscious, you have how it relates already, begins to relate to consciousness. That's Arich, what we call Makif of Er Yashar, and Makif of Er Chayzer is Atik. These were the two levels of Kteris, the Kteris of every day and the Shemin of every day, were connected to Arich. Karbonis is connected far more to Pnimi, to Chochma Gluya, to the 10 spheres. Kteris is 11th, which is Keser, Yud Aleph Keser. And then there's Kteris of Yom Kippur, that's Tshuva, Yom Kippur Er Chayzer. And he explained to really get into that higher level of Atik, you can't be through regular Aveda. Because the regular process of work, he said, there's two levels. There's Ava that fills your heart, and there's Ava that's beyond your heart. What he calls Rusa Deliba. And he explained in Aveda, Mizbeach HaPnimi, Mizbeach HaChitzon is the Karbonis. Mizbeach HaChitzon Karbonis is Ava Pidham V'das. Which means what? You contemplate, instead of focusing on, let's say, my selfish needs, or contemplating on your business, or contemplating on other so-called survival things, you contemplate, God gives me life. Hu chayecha. Gives me health, gives me a family. And that arouses, in turn, a love. A love that you relate to. He's good for me. Tevli. Kirvas Hashem Tevli. God is good for me. And you see it to be far superior than everything else in this world. That's his bonus. But that's his bonus. There's a Hergesh Atzmei, there's you, me. Like we spoke, David HaMelech. It's a level. Learning Torah, Adaita the Nafsha, meaning what you gain from it. And not necessarily a negative gain. But it's you. There's a you. Then comes Rusa Deliba, is the Ava of saying God is beyond me. He's beyond existence. He's beyond existence. So this arouses Hafla. I'm in awe of God. Not just God is good for me, like, with Ava, an intimate closeness. This is already God beyond. And therefore, this is already Kteris. First was Kabbalah, Kteris. Mizbeach HaPnimi. Rusa Deliba. And this has the power not just to affect the hispastus of the Nefesh Habamis, its expression, which the first level does. The first level tames your animal soul, because instead of pursuing animal interests, even your animal soul understands, or at least it subjugates, it respects that God is good for me. God, I want, just like you love your life, you love your soul. You love God who gives you your soul. He said, this is literally what he says in Ayin Beis. So that can't attack the core Nefesh Habahamis, because Nefesh Habahamis is who you are. Nefesh Habahamis is enjoying actually this experience. What attacks the core of the animal soul, in other words, not just the symptoms, that requires the Ava, the Usa Deliba, which is not filling you up, it's taking you out of you and saying there's a whole God that's beyond you. Now, by the way, I didn't touch, anything I said here is not at all affected by our conversation. Am I correct? It's mamish what he says. But this is also not the highest. Because this is, the ultimate, by the way, is when these two come together, where the God that's in you is connected to the God that's beyond you. We haven't discussed that yet. That's already. But then comes the level of Keteris of Yom Kippur. So how do you reach? So a tzaddik, or a Beini for that matter, he says, you go from the lower Ava Apitam Vadas to Ava L'mayla Mitam Vadas. You come to realize, as he put it, that is beyond. What was the words I wanted to say? The Aved of Makif of first Aved of Nefesh Ruach Neshama is Pnimi. That would be Chabad Chagas Nehim. The Aved of Arich is Makif of Er Yashar, that's Chaya. This is all, as he says, the Aved of the Neshama on its own. Makif. So you go from Primim to Makifim. It would be. Now comes Atik. Atik, however, is concealed, fundamentally concealed. Chachmas Tema there is beyond, it's not relative to you. So how do you break into a place that's fundamentally concealed? So you need something that's not in the regular order. So he calls it Kabbalah sale. When you learn Torah, b'mesidin asin, Kabbalah sale. Obviously, we're talking healthy Kabbalah sale, right? That's obvious. So that, he says, that's his kashus. His kashus. We say kashus to the Rebbe. You can begin contemplating that the Rebbe is good for you. It's important to have a Rebbe. He gives me direction, gives me clarity, courage, he answers my questions. That's the Rebbe good for you. Says the Rebbe of Mamala Kalam. Then you come to understand the Rebbe is beyond me. And I want to be around something that's beyond me. As he said earlier, even that's a little Hegeshatzme. We talked about, remember the levels of bittel? You said, it's not because it's good for me. I feel good to be an eved of something so great. Then he went to a level that even if it's not you, there's a lot of bittel. There's 5-6 levels we learned just about that. By David, it was by David. Because the question was, what's wrong with David? How could, since this level, Sasam Be'etzem, what's wrong? David was speaking about the Torah as it relates to him. Why is he being punished for something that he doesn't relate to? So he says, because in Avedi you're supposed to relate even to the things that don't relate to you. That's what he said, Befedish. Anyway, he went levels there. I don't want to go through all the levels. There's a whole bunch of levels. But there comes a point where Kabbalah said his kashas, he called the Das Hanelam, Avira Ashal Gabi Krema, which is like on top of the membrane. He calls this this is the deeper level of Chachmas Tima. He says, Naved is Kabbalah Sale and Erchezer Tshuva. It looks like two ways. Kabbalah Sale seems more not through menagid, in other words, not through doing tshuva on the negative. Kabbalah Sale, you can have Kabbalah Sale, even tzaddik could have Kabbalah Sale. But Kabbalah Sale does something that the regular Aveda doesn't do. Because the second level of Rusa Deliba is not Kabbalah Sale. You're contemplating that God's beyond you. It's also a contemplation. Here, you're doing something completely hiskashas, complete dedication, totally dedication. So going back to the Rebbe, that would be a hiskashas. That's more than that the Rebbe is beyond you. I'm committed, I'm in. Whatever it takes. It's even beyond Ma'al Matam Vadas in a way. It's like a hiskashas atzmis. Now, obviously, if you didn't come to a healthy way to get to there, if you were taught that hiskashas, you're never going to have a healthy hiskashas. That needs to be addressed. But we're talking here, he's talking the healthy approach. So of course someone's going to ask, if that's the case, this is not for me. Because this is only talking to people who are healthy mukusharim. No, that's not correct, because here he doesn't say it. In other places he does address what happens when you don't have that type of feeling or sense. This doesn't mean this is a big formula here. He's talking about this part of the formula. And I would go a step further. Learning this, even if you're a completely unhealthy person in your emotional connection to Yiddishkeit and to Rebbe, learning this, what is healthy expected, is itself quite cleansing. Because you start seeing, this is what's meant. It didn't mean to beat me up, that type of thing. But let's go back here. Okay, so now now we go Chezer Kabbalah. Okay, then that was a summary till this mimer. Then Reish Chav Gimel, we're now Reish Chav Hey. I'm just summing up. Apikol now, he went back to the interface. And what I just actually no, what I said is Reish Chav Gimel. Sorry, Reish Chav Daled. Reish Chav Daled. He goes back to the Zohar that he began. All this was built on a Zohar Pasha Balak, a cryptic 4 lines in Zohar. We're talking about over 70 pages of discussion, which is built on a mimer from the Alter Rebbe said Balak Tovkuf Samach Ches, which was then explained by the Tzemach Tzedek in Be'ir HaZeir, and the Rebbe Rashab takes all that and elaborates Barichas Gdela, a long elaboration. And now he brings it back. The Zohar says the following. The Zohar says, after he says, he explained that's the elevating also the Shtalshus up to its source in Keser, then he says there, Eidish Shimcha, and he continues, Kiasisa Pella. So Zohar says, what's Kiasisa Pella? Because you created Pella. What does it have to do with lifting all the Shtalshus to Keser? She says, because Pella is Keser. Actually, Pella is the letters Aleph. So Pella is 2 levels in Chachma, as we shall learn. Aleph is how Chachma speaks downwards, Aleph Bina. It's an educator, Aleph from the word education, instruction. And this Pella is how it looks upward. Pella, Haflah, the Haflah of the divine. So the Zohar says, Kisur, this Pella, which as we're going to learn is Chachma, the lower Chachma, is a covering for Atik. It's a levush for Atik. So he explained at length what means it's a levush. Chachma Stima is actually Atik, just metamorphosized into another state of being. It's not like a garment that's detached. It's actually made of, it is Atik, but Atik has no Keli. Bottom line, let me put it to you bluntly, it's a new take on intelligence. The root of unconscious, superconscious intelligence in the Chachma Stima is not really intelligence, it's Tainug. It's Tainug with a Keli starts looking like intelligence. She asked me before about logic. According to Chassidus, logic is not logical. Logic is a creation that takes the shape of structure, but that itself was willed. Where does it originate from? God created logic, so clearly logic is a creation. It originates from a place that is divine. And that divine manifested in what we call divine pleasures, of the expression of like God wants, God desires. That in turn, because he wanted a structure of existence to communicate with the etzem of the divine, he allowed his tainuk to translate into an intelligent system. So when we can experience an intelligent system of logic, this is the tip of the iceberg of a reality that's beyond intelligence. Superintelligence. And from superintelligence to the etzem itself, that's beyond intelligence. It's tremendous vart. I mean, it's really the because let's put it this way. Let's say, I used the example, an artist draws a piece of art. He gives it to you as a gift. I love you, I'm giving you a piece of art. Okay? And, okay, it's a valuable piece of art. Forget about the whole inflation of the commercialism of art. It's valuable because it's my handiwork. I gave you something I created. So you say, no, I gave you something that is like non-nafshik service. I gave you something I invested in my life. I'm just using an example. 2 people like this. And it's a permanent thing you can take, you hang up. It could be a book. I just use that. It could be a piece of music. I'm using art because that's the martial. It could be anything. Now, you say, you know what? How much of that person, of the person that loves me, how much did he give me in this piece of art? So you could say, he gave me something valuable because he created it. It's his ingenuity, it's his craft, it's his skill, and so on. But it's not his whole. That's it. You could argue that. But then you come to conclude, 1 second, but is this person who is the artist, he's also beyond being an artist. He's not only an artist, he's also a human being. He's also a human being. So though the structure of art I relate to, but in it must lie more of him. And you start studying the art, and you start realizing, there's cryptic messages in it, intentional, unintentional, because everyone invests, like we know, the Magid was able to recognize in the Keli who created the Keli, but it's not necessarily a Ruach HaKodesh thing. There's invested, today we have, even in secular studies, they have what they call deconstruction. They take a book, and they can identify what that person went through because how they wrote about something, how they write about pain. You can see a person's natiyas based on how he wrote about it. Someone, for example, writes about hating women, usually he hated his mother. That's how they analyze it. Yeah. Okay. So you start realizing there's more. It's not just the art that is expressed, there's also hidden stuff. Then you come to realize, one second, but there's a whole person, there's a whole artist that's beyond even artist. Oh, let's not even go there. Let's first say, he can make infinite pieces of art. He only gave me one piece, but that one piece is one of many possibilities. Fine. Then you come to realize you can't even magdir him, you can't categorize him as an artist. However, he still gave me this art. And that's the chiddush, that the Eibishter Atzmus was able to put himself into one piece of art. And one piece of art will give you not just this piece of art, it'll also give you the hidden, and it'll also give you himself. Obviously, Torah is the most powerful element of that, because I gave you my Torah. If God had not given us Torah, you could say he gave us art. He created a world, a beautiful world. But he gave us not that, he gave us the engineering manual. He gave us his own blueprint, where he told us how he did it and how we can retrace the steps. Okay? Now tell me if that's not an act of love. Someone gave you his art, he's also giving you how I made this art and how you connect them. Anyway, going back to the point, so now you have Elokus that's not just hidden, that's beyond the logic. You have the etzem itself. That's atik, and higher than atik. That's the etzem. Atik is removed. You can't call atik anything that is an intelligent structure. You can't call it structure. And atik itself is the tachteina shebemaitzil, is the so-called how etzem is experienced in our lives. But atik in turn translates into chayr, into chachmas tima be'etzem. So you're beginning to have a place where our logic can touch that which is beyond. Like I just gave the example with the artist. You started with logic, but you came to understand, something. You came to understand that there's a whole beyond, even in this, through this piece of art. Now remember, in our case, it's more than the art. We also have a soul. So I didn't just give you the art. You have a soul that is a part of Tzelem Elokim. So the artist didn't just give you an art, he also gave you a soul that's like him. So obviously that helps. That's why he keeps bringing that the neshama is mekusher. It's not just the art connects you. The art's connection to God is lower than the neshama's connection. But put together, you can learn to have an intimate relationship with etzem that's higher than the whole structure. I think this example works very well to what we're saying here. And therefore, chachmas tima is not a lavush. The place, that place, this mysterious place where tainug, where atik touches and becomes chachmas tima, it's like the place where the second of conception, when an egg is fertilized by the seed. So these are mysterious moments, because it's not yesh, it's not ayin, it's the second. By the time you're already aware of it, and here we're not even aware, we're still talking to the supraconscious. That's why this is so subtle, because he's not talking about where an idea came into your conscious mind from beyond. That's the lower chachmas tima to chachma liyah. We're talking where chachmas tima, the higher, got its message, its download from atik, which is connected to the etzem. So I'm just trying to find aces, because that was our biggest challenge here. So that was the first half of chapter Reish Chav Dalet. You see, it's pretty heavy stuff. One sec. Okay, yeah, and then we'll go over to the Hester of
this higher level of chachmas tima, where it touches tainug, so to speak, or seifel touches tainug. You're referring to it, I think, as super consciousness. Wouldn't supra be a better than super?
It is supra.
I said supra.
Oh, you are saying supra.
Supra, yeah.
Supra. Okay.
No, supra, yeah. Superman, but supra. Yeah, supra is better than unconscious. It's just less familiar. Nobody knows the word.
Super, I think it means within consciousness. It's related. Supra is above consciousness.
Yeah, supra, yeah. Super conscious means you're it's like hyper alert type of thing.
It's the highest
It's like hyper conscious. Right.
But this is above
Supra. So supra.
Yeah, it is supra.
S-U-P-R-A.
It's important.
Yeah. Now comes a whole other dimension, which is really where we're in the middle of now. Any questions? But I think in the last 10 minutes is such fundamental stuff, unbelievable. Like really the essence of
It's like Ma'aseh Merkava.
I'll tell you what's missing in what I said. I didn't speak the Aved of it. Like how do you touch it? It looks like Kabbalah soil and Tshuva, because there's such intense forces, touch this place. They're the only ones that can actually enter there. Because you see, you can't enter with your Metzias, because your Metzias doesn't belong there. It's like upon el yiro. You can't see my face. You and I cannot coexist there. So you have to enter with something. So God had to give us a tool that lets you get out of yourself, but it's still you. So that's Kabbalah Sel.
Where does Mesiras Nefesh fit into that?
Mesiras Nefesh would probably be in the category of Erchezer or Kabbalah Sel. He doesn't say it specifically here. He doesn't use that expression.
Kabbalah Soul rather than Mesiras Nefesh.
Yeah.
Whereas we say Mesiras Nefesh.
I guess because also he wants to say it's something that you can achieve every day. Mesiras Nefesh is not. Mesiras Nefesh is a one-time thing. You know.
Well, if you live your life with...
No. So that's Mesiras Nefesh. So then he does say that. He says Mesiras Nefesh. So then is that element of Mesiras Nefesh. If you meant Mesiras Nefesh, Al Kiddush Hashem, like the extreme. Yeah. Remember, Yom Kippur is not every day. When when we stand by the Ilah and we imagine giving your whole, that's not expected every day. Even though, no, on a microcosm every day when you come b'chol you're supposed to sense it, but it's still not like Yom Kippur. It's like many things. Remember, the rest of the year you're trying to bring it into existence. You need both. It's a dance between two levels, because Mesiras Nefesh is not a place you live. Mesiras Nefesh is a place you enter. It's like the foundation. You live in the world of Giluyim. You live in the world of everyday action.
The Kayin used to go and take
That's infused with Mesiras Nefesh.
The Kayin used to go to
But remember,
in Siberia for Yitzchak lived with Mesiras Nefesh. That their day-to-day life
anything with Yisurim and that for sure goes. That's what we're going to learn. Golus. That's it. We're going to learn that.
You said right now.
Yeah. Actually, you could say the later part. What we're talking here, Mesiras Nefesh, when you go on Kiddush Hashem, when you're obstinate against the halamas of Golus. Yeah. You could say that's why I didn't probably bring it earlier. Yeah, there's no question. The bottom line is these are all forces that do not annihilate you, but they also not you with any mitzias is mixed into it. So Kabbalah Sel ends up becoming our most powerful tool of all. Can you imagine? The thing that we also
Kabbalah Sel.
Healthy Kabbalah Sel is really suspending yourself for a higher cause. That's how I define Kabbalah Sel. Simple as that. It's not annihilation. It's definitely not scooping the dresses, shmata, shuffle. Moshe, Anov, Mikol Adam. The Rebbe said by Fabrein, I mentioned it, Tavshel Chavav, the Rebbe said, what's bittel? A garnished. That's not feeling you're garnished because you think the other person's aggressor garnished. That's not bittel. Bittel is knowing that everything you have God gave you, and if someone else was given that, they've done better than you. Bittel, I talk about bittel almost in every class of mine because it's the yesod of everything. Bittel is the story in Chelem where the guy shows around his friend, a big city farmer. The Chelem farmer shows him around. Chelem farmer, you can imagine, is this tiny. So he asks the big farmer, he said, the big town city farmer from Texas, whatever. So what do you think about my farm? He says, your farm is very nice and cute, but it's tiny. So he says, what do you mean tiny? How big is your farm back in Texas? So he says, my farm is, how is he going to explain it to him? So he says, it takes me all day to travel with my tractor from one end of the farm to the next. So the guy suddenly feels empathy for the big farmer. He says, don't feel bad. I once had a tractor like that too. Okay. So he couldn't fathom a farm that's this size. So for him, he's convinced it must be the Shmata Jalap. It took him all day to crank it up, to move from here to there. Bittel is this. Bittel is knowing that we all have a farm and there's a bigger farm than yours. Thinking out of the box. That's real bittel. That's real Kabbalah Sel. I know you may never have heard it that way. That's exactly Kabbalah Sel. Kabbalah Sel is realizing your little farm is not where it begins and ends. It's not me and my needs. It's realizing there's a bigger horizon. And that's not that makes you a far bigger person if you know that. Even though at the same time it's telling you your life doesn't begin and end. Anyone that had Shua Munah and B'tachon felt that way. When the Frierdiker Rebbe could tell those guys that this gun can scare a person who has one world and many gods, but not someone who has one God and two worlds or many worlds. What do you mean? This world life and death doesn't scare me. This is one little step in a big picture. Anyone that went with a munah to Mesiras Nefesh, what they say? You can take my body, but you can't take my neshama. You can take my life, you can't take my faith. And if it won't be me, it'll be my children and my grandchildren. The yesod of Yehisha Amdalanu from the beginning of time. That's why no one can annihilate us. Pare cannot annihilate with all the armies. You can't annihilate a munah. There's nothing you can do to kill it because it's not about the person. You can kill the person, you can't kill his that which he's not. The Rebbe has an expression which to me is the essence of bittel. Bittel kenish bottle werden. You hear? The only thing that can be bittel is bittel. So if you're mitzias or you're bittel, if you're bittel, you actually have far more eternity and immortality than if you're not. Because if you're a big guy, okay, you're powerful, you control an army, you control 1 million people. But everybody has their time. Every gvul has its, gvul. But if you're bittel kenish bottle werden. So frankly, my yeshus one's bittel. If you know what I'm saying. Immortality. But there's something you have to give up for it. The zich. What do I mean zich? Your interests. My little box. This is healthy bittul, what I just said. Now I know for somebody, when I say this to somebody who grew up, let's say, in a home that doesn't have love or so on like that, I wouldn't say it this way. I would explain it. Because that person needs to be nurtured to say, you know what? The person says, I feel like a shmat. I came home, my father and mother never looked at me. They got divorced and they hated me. A guy just told me, Mamish last week, I can't believe it was Mamish last week, he called me from California, someone gave him my book, he's a secular guy, he says, I grew up in a home where my father told me, my father left my mother, then when I finally went and found my father, my biological father, he told me, I wish you were never born, I wish you had died. He says, imagine hearing that from your father. When your mother got pregnant with you, I wish you had died. I said, how do you get it beyond that? And she said, this person told me, your book saved my life. Because I started reading it and it said, birth is God saying you matter. This mamish saved my life. Still hard. Birth is God saying you matter. I realized it's not my father. God gave me life. And God gives me value, not my father's words. And he told me it's still a struggle. Not only that, when every time he has a child, he needs his wife's reinforcement and people to tell him, because his words come back haunting him, that my father said to me that I wish you had died. So of course a person like that, obviously you can't just say, let's talk about bittul b'mitzias ta'atzmus. Because you have to, but you still say it. You just have to say it in the right kind words. You don't say, because if you say it the wrong way, it sounds like, oh, you're also telling me I don't exist. My father told me I died, and God says, obviously, you have your little common sense, you realize that. No, I'm putting it very, very strong terms. So a person like that, you say, God, you want God? God created you. He put you here. What gives you more value, God or your father? And by the way, anyone who really goes to healing through parental things, all come to the one thing. They find out that God and nurturing through God is what ultimately replaces the nurturing you should have got from your parents. That's ultimate healing. And I'm speaking now on a secular level. I'm not talking even from people. 12 steps. They all come down to, actually there's a pasuk. It says, what is the lesson? Ach ein lei. I use it always this way. I mean, I'm not ready to say it tonight because this is heavy stuff. I'm going to say it, I got to get people warmed up before they hear my radical things. They're listening to Ayin Beis, it's fine. Now we're on Atzmos terms. They're not again of dimensions terms. It's different. To know who you're talking to. Here we're all bottled with mitzias in a healthy way, right? We're all advanced bittel. This is the course in advanced bittel. Look at him, this guy.
He's got
graduate course. 302.
We can have 3 classrooms. If you want dysfunctional bittel, go to room number 2. You want a little taste of bittel, hayesh, go to 3. You want some bittel mitzias? I think that's what we have to do.
Make a retreat and then we'll have people.
Yeah. Okay. How we go like this? From 1 to 10, how much of a shmata do you feel? And based on that, we send you to the right classroom. Got a whole workshop being developed right here. So from 1 to 10, 20.
But isn't there another step between bittul and Kabbalah soul? Meaning that a person...
Look, obviously, but I want to just finish one thing. So a person like that I just described, and I'm telling you, a person who said the father's, you cannot, I can never imagine my father as a loving person. I can't even imagine my wildest dream someone, but a parent tells you that. You can imagine it's not like a nice, some statement someone made. It's a parent you haven't seen your whole life. You're haunted by your father's disappearance for your whole life. The first thing you meet him, he tells you, I wanted you dead.
Jewish? Was he Jewish, his father?
Yeah, Jewish. Nicht gesunde Mensch. Some Jews are sick too, by the way. Yeah. And when a sick Jew, they say, is worse than a sick other type. Because then it's eich mit der ganze chelik elikam mamash is also a trap. Like I said, religious dysfunctionality is far more lethal than dysfunctionality without religion. Hazeh the klal. Yeah, but anyway, but I want to say, so a person like that, what's the work to do? It's a lot of work. As a matter of fact, by the way, people like that person I mentioned, and some others that I've dealt with, when they come to find God, you can't believe how much you can learn from them, because for them it's like their lifeline. By us, God, okay, listen, have a God. They really embrace God. Because this person told, without God, I don't exist. You understand? It's not like I have a whole support system, my father and mother are there, and everybody's telling me they love me. Without God, I have no existence. So they hold on to it for their dear life, and they're such refined states, I'm telling you, I don't envy them because to go through that such pain, but what they reach is 100% atik, stuck in shaila by me. Because you can only reach it through that type of anguish. 100%. Like you said, tsar. No question. The only way is through that. And I'm not talking about theories. I'm applying this to real. So what do you do with a person like that? I use a few things. That pasuk, it's the shit. What does it say? Ben einle, ach einle. It's the Eibishter doesn't have. I always use the people who don't feel they have family. I say, so you reach Etzem without family. Another thing I always use for this is the Rambam. I know it's out of left field. Rabbi Avadia Hager, listen to this. Avadia Hager was a big Talmud Chacham. He lived in the time of the Rambam. He was a major scholar. He was a ger. He's called Avadia Hager, like Unkelis type. He writes to the Rambam a letter saying, why do I feel like a second-class citizen? I'm a ger. I'll always be seen as a ger. And we're talking about a major Talmud Chacham. He didn't have self-esteem issues, and he was respected and all that. But he says, I'm always a ger. A tzuge kumina, as they say. It's the first Baal Tshuva syndrome letter, okay? And the Rambam answers him, the Rebbe brings it. He says, Adarab, Jews that are born to Jewish mother, their yichus goes to Avram, Yitzchak, Yankov. And your yichus goes straight to Misha Amar V'Haya Elam, straight to God, without intermediaries. Now the Rambam is not just this guy was a Talmud Chacham, he's not just sending him some type of nice little cute line. And I always think about it, that from a psychological point of view, it's a tremendous lesson. It's true. Obviously, you have parents and you have lineage. It's like a yichus and it's a comfort and it's like having the roots. But don't think, because the Torah says all the places Avos Yisrael. How many times? 5 times by a ger. Because the Torah understands that a person. So you apply ger now to a dysfunctional person. Doesn't feel I have a family. I feel nobody loves me. Chassidus betrayed me. All that. That's the answer. Misha Amar V'Haya Elam. To say reclaim self, reclaim the self. Who's going to give you yourself? Your mother and father didn't give it to you, so the only one who's going to give it to you is God, and no one else can give it to you. No therapist, no doctor. What do they know? And they can tell you, I will reinforce. Obviously, it's important to have a support and a family community. That's why I think anyone in healing needs to have a community. It's a very critical element. It's not enough just to learn Chassidus and learn this Atzmos. You do need chaverim, and you need dibuk chaverim. You need support on a daily level. So I think what I just said applies. This idea this is an application. This case, I can't believe it was Mamish last week. This person call me. Didn't even connect the two. I see. I guess Midas and Eschanas brings out all kinds of things. Not Eschanas, getting deeper, digging deeper. That's a topic I wanted. I've got a few questions like that. Some people said, "How could you have kabit for parents that are like monsters?" So that's coming up. As I said, I'm keeping the juicy stuff.
The Gemara says how far do you have to go keep him that even if the mother you were giving a share, you were on the dais, and your mother came up and spit at you in the face, you still have to accept
okay,
that.
The question some people say.
So it's addressed. In other words, she's a monster. She's
but
in front of everybody.
But we're talking about a mother that physically hurt you, not just like Rabbi Kiva's mother. So your mother did so much for you. So now that she's a little senile, or she's this. But what happens? The problem is if parents literally, it's destructive for you to be in their presence because they really abused you. It gets worse.
There's the story of the Tana and Ameda that have to run away.
Rabbi Kiva says his mother was walking she put his hands under her feet, so she was older, so she didn't realize she was walking, getting her feet cut, bleeding. So he put his hands under her feet, Okay, but that I understand, Mitzad. What happens if the mother's a real okay?
There was another one who his mother was making so much sugar that Sasha couldn't be with her, and he ran away to another country.
And what happened?
Nothing. It's explaining that there's certain times that it's justified.
No, it's definitely justified.
Yeah,
That's why the word says kabe, it doesn't say oyev.
The Rambam says
Yeah.
that if your parents are totally, like they went off the cliff, then you leave them. Whatever.
Anyway, so now he goes to the second half of this, which is what we talk now, which I think I found the answer to the question we were discussing. And that is this. He says now, it's really, the reason I'm literally like making a break, even though here it's all in the same chapter. He says from this level of Chachmas Tima, so everyone held up what we said about the Chachmas Tima. So to get there, you need some type of Kabbalah Seil, Chezer, some type of intense entry there. But then you're reaching a place that's beyond Giluyim. So in other words, interestingly, in the example I gave with abuse, if you had no Giluyim L'mal Yusa, L'griyusa rather, the only way to solve it is to get no Giluyim L'mal Yusa. Right. So in other words, it's like what says in Chassidus, in Likutei Torah, he says in Bamidbar, Lo Yoshev Adam Sham. So he says that Bamidbar is a place where no man lives. It's not a civilized place. So usually it's talked in Yecheskel in a negative way. There's Ir, what's the Lashon? Ir, the different expressions. Ir Sod Midbar, right. And in Midbar is a place. So Alter Rebbe says, Lo Yoshev Adam Sham. Could also be tied, Lo Yoshev Adam, because the Eibush is higher than Adam. So it could be Lamata Adam, which means someone that is not civilized as in the wilderness. It could be Lamayla Adam, because there's no tzir. That's why he gave Matan Teira Dafka, was in the Etzem. So everything in Chassidus is like that. Interesting that something that's stripped can be stripped in a negative way, like you lost all sense of dignity, let's say, but it could also be stripped in the positive way, where it's beyond any level of Giluyim. That's somewhat a little what he's saying here. And Chochmas Tima is the key place. So I guess that's what it is. Kabbalah Seil, learning Torah. The Chochma learning Torah, the wisdom is Chochmas Tima, the lower level, and Chochma Gluya. The Kabbalah Seil Shabbat Torah, the Figia, this Kasher Shabbat is the super, and you combine both, and it's that's what he said. That's what causes you to want it. He said, and that causes you to actually rebuild. Even if you don't want, you still do it. Yeah. Ultimately, it comes down to how do you channel a person's pain into a state where it gets them to be motivated because of their pain to go to that place. See, most problem is the big question that's being discussed again is, if I'm in pain, do you indulge the person and just make them feel less pain, or do you take the pain and let them dig in a very deep place inside of them? I guess the answer is both. You got to do both. You got to console someone, and then you got to get them motivated to use the pain to reach a place they could never have reached without the pain. Yeah, because without the console. So we look in the Tanya Atzvos. So there he says, "Faked, you should be b'simcha because you can overcome this challenge, and faked because through that you're connecting to the God that's behelim in the Yisurim." It ultimately comes down to you need someone who loves you and loves God and knows how to convey that to you in the right way. I guess this is the simplest formula of all. A Yiddish Shemayim, a Mashpia, who loves God, loves you, and knows how to convey a loving God instead of a angry God, or the other distortions. That's without that, I can't see someone who's been hurt, because they need some dugma, they need someone. Maybe that's why the Alter Rebbe said that if you can't find an answer, go to a G'delim Shebe'ir, because how are the G'delim going to find an answer in the Tanya? The answer is because you need also a person who knows how to apply it. It goes back to the Sifri, Vahafta. The Sifri that says Vahafta Shamakach does. He asks the question, the mitzvah is only love? He says no, to make God beloved to people. That when they see you, make God beloved. Chiddush Hashem. They see you, they say, a godly person, I love a God that created a person like this. The Ummah Zev, that is an atheist who writes, I hate you, God, as if you existed. You ever hear that one? I hate you like as if you really existed.
I'm an atheist, thank God.
Yeah. So now the second half goes, so another thing that comes from this sasum, this chachmas tima sasum be'etzim, he says, is root to another thing. And this is to Kreche Hester, the power of God's concealment from us. So he says the higher, that's explained, the Malyusa is a market for the Ligrius. In other words, so this fundamental concealment, the Chachmas Tima, is the root for the concealments where we don't see godliness. And he gives the example of a father, Eve Sheichre Musar, that if you love him, you rebuke him. And he says, a father, I'm just summing it up, and then a father, a parent, doesn't, the fact that he rebukes a child that, what he says, became sullied, some way was compromised. And clearly, if he's rebuking him, it's meaning the child has power to do something about it. He wouldn't rebuke, a little baby falls down, you don't. So he's talking here about something about getting him to repair. So let's say your child comes home, they did something really terrible. Okay, I don't want to give away everything I'm saying tonight. Okay, I'll just give you a taste. Now come home. Now, so you could take an attitude of, who cares? You could take an attitude of just pure punishment, rebuke, or it can be love, rebuke that comes from love. He says, because if he didn't love his child, why would he care that the child got hurt, that the child got sullied, got compromised? He said, where's the lashon? Yeah. Where's the lashon?
Right here. 4 lines from the bottom.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 5. It's the same thing with the Eibishter. Haben Yakeli Ephraim. Jews are called my son, is precious to me. Hafti Eschem Aman Hashem, and that's why we get rebuked at times, because we're not living up to what our potential is. So he explains, in this rebuke lies the etzem ava. If you never had fallen and never been compromised, you'd never know there's such deep ava. And he qualifies. We're not talking about gvura shebechesed, where you have to monitor the flow because the person can't contain the full love, so you have to give it to them in a digestible way. That's simply a helam for gili. Here we're talking about helam be'etzem. You're seeing hepech hagili. You're seeing rebuke. You're seeing something that seems to be negative in every possible way. In that lies the depth of the love. And when you remove the external lavush, then the Av is revealed. This is Mamish Perik Chav Zayin in Tanya. Chav Zayin. Well, Chav Zayin, yeah. What does he say there? Now, when the person talks about Yisurim there, talks about someone has negative stuff, negative depression, anxiety, or he has elements of Yisurim. So he says that the approach is you have to go and be besimcha because you can overcome it. It was only given to you as a challenge for you to overcome. And Adarabah, by overcoming it, in there lies, he says, deeper love than revealed love. But it can only be revealed when you overcome and not only demoralized by it. Okay, so that's the Atzmala. So this is the example what he said, Chachmas Tima, therefore, Chachmas Tima is the root of it, of this Hester, and it's only a lavush. It's really Ava. It just takes on the shape of complete concealment. And then in chapter 225, where we're up to, he says, Hadugma zeyuva min hagolus. He goes into the whole thing of Golus. All the pains, all the difficulties and concealments in Golus, he says, comes from Atzmus Ein Sof. That's what he says. V'ov v'oyev es Yaakov. Because Yaakov and Esav are brothers, that's on the level of Shtalshus, Teyo and Tikkun. In this Primis Atzmus, that's where he loves. And that's why it's Negeya when he sees a lichluch, when he sees, what do we call lichluch? A stain. A soil, a stain. Because of the Primis Abba. So all of the concealments and coverings in Golus are all because of the deep ava. Sibas Agvuri hi afela, he brought from the Pardes. I'm just summing it up. And the power of this concealment of Golus, where does it come from? It comes from that fundamental concealment of Chachmas Tima in Atik that allows for this. It explains, because it's Bein Arech Makala Giluyim, that's the level of Chachmas Tima, Shemen HaTev Shebchinas Sebim, who Bchinas Stimas Bet, Shen Bchinas Makala Giluyim. Okay, Meshom Udavka Kerech Halam. Because it's beyond any Giluyim. But its Tachlis is ultimate good. Now how do you get there? So here, I'll start from the 3 lines from the bottom, even though we learned it, we'll go. How do you reveal now this ultimate Ava that's completely concealed in the darkest Golus? You do, through the work in this level of concealment, that even while you find yourself in abundant, intense concealments and coverings, you stand strong in performance of Torah mitzvahs, and you stand up against any resistance. No thing, nothing from the many blocks and impediments in Zman HaGolus stops you from Esek HaTorah and Mekima Mitzvahs. And then we added, not just, okay, this would mean you ignored the Helam. Now he's going to say you don't just ignore it, you actually use it to your favor. And specifically to the work of actually in the concealments, transforming them, working with them. In other words, using them as a catalyst. You're like using the negative energy for positive. What is that? A person sweetens the gvuras, which is that the Yetzirah should be transformed to godliness. How is that? Do you take the intensity and the power of the animal soul, transform it to kedusha? 2 ways. Both in a tshuva with greater strength. It bothers him. He feels constrained. So the negative constraint causes him to have far more intensity to break out. When you feel you're in prison, you're like in a state of what we spoke earlier, remember, a state of crisis, you get much more energy to break out. And it comes to tshuva. The cry, when it comes from that place of such constraint, you feel the pressure, is far deeper and far more from the core. As we'll look at what we'll learn later. And the second way it creates more takev, because takev ha'ava, the positive. Not the cry to get out, but the intensity of your love and your yearning. So in other words, let's say a person is in a desert and they haven't drank water for a while. They have 2 types of intensity going on. One, the intensity of I got to get out of this thirst and get water. And the second is when they drink water, they drink it with far more pleasure and intensity than. So I mean, you could say it's the same intensity, but it's really 2 components to it. One is getting out, and the other is obviously one informs the other. I think in Tanya Perek Zayin, he only talks about the second one. Or am I wrong? What does he say there? Mekivan remember? How is it in Tanya Perek Zayin? Maybe he does talk about both. Okay. So fine. 2 intensities. 2 levels of intensity. And that's the meaning that my heart and my flesh rejoice, or what do we say? Jubilate. Celebrate. So we're not talking about your soul. What's the levet basar? Why is it levet basar? Levet basar should only be, don't let them resist. No. They themselves, the fleshy heart and the flesh of the physical flesh, they're jubilating, they're celebrating mamash ishapcha. And that means that the nefesh habayis, not just you ignored the nefesh habayis' voice, you ignored the concealment. You actually, the nefesh habayis doesn't have any other good except the good of godliness, and that he has fundamental pleasure. When you do that, in other words, you did not buy in to the concealment and let it overcome you. On the contrary, you became in control. Through that, you reveal the fundamental concealment, the b'chinas atzmus chochmas tema. From the level of atzmus chochmas tema. I'm almost sure this is almost the same take in the Perek of Zayin and Tanya. Am I right? It talks about atzmus, That when you don't let it talks about Ametz Shemesh b'gvuraseh. That when a person has Yisurim and he fights it, why? Because he realizes his Avos Hashem is really concealed there, and he wants to be close to God. So that brings there's a simcha there. Similar idea. Okay. Let's continue. Everybody clear? For who? And now he's going back to the Asis of the Zohar. So again, I have to refer us back to chapters back. We're talking now back at least, Kuf Tzadik Beis, around that area. So v'hu sheb'chinas pella nasa b'chinas aleph. We haven't heard that at least in almost 30 chapters ago. That pella becomes aleph. What's pella? So if you remember, pella is beyond, became aleph. Pnim. Because when you, pella is the helam. That's him. And it becomes aleph, gilui. Like it says, we shall draw the water with joy. That you should receive ulfon. He teaches ulfon sosen. 1 second. He teaches. That's a new
learning, a new understanding.
Right. So he teaches mayim besosen, shat mayim besosen, that you will receive a new appreciation, a new understanding. Ulfan from the word alefcha, from teaching. Chadas. Chadas in Hebrew, chadata, is like new. But which types of v'shaftim? Tkablan is v'shaftim. I guess mayim is ulfan and chadas is besasen. Yeah, that's pashtus. Okay. So shaftim mayim besasen. Because mayim, I guess, is chokhmah, and sasen is v'hainu shabchinas pella de chokhmas tima. This means that pella of chokhmas tima yeh la'asid b'bchinas ulfan v'limud. In the future, will become a led educator, a informer, a guider, a guide. Shazel limud chadash legamri. This is a completely new type of learning. Today when we learn, the educator teaches you, it's all what's revealed. Levad. Only what's revealed. You can't teach the etzem. And the future, at the core of the supra conscious, will be in a state of education. Now, of course, you could ask the question, if it could be that way, why can't it be today that way? Is he going to explain that? Yeah, he's going to explain. Why? Because the Hester of Golus allows us to get there. If you never had pain and resistance, you can only climb till Arich, as we discussed. You have no way, nothing can catapult you into a place of Etzem. So to experience Etzem remains a matter of faith. To have limud, to say, I can understand it like I learned it, you need something, another additional energy, additional force that causes you to have that. And that's the Hester he's going to say. V'zehu.
It's interesting, a failure. He doesn't say this, but a failure is also the same.
Whoa, nice.
We had on the previous, the darkness.
Yeah, but he's talking about that.
No, he doesn't say that. Failure is Isis Aleph and Pella.
Interesting, I understand. Okay. But maybe it's hinted to. A failure, the heavy darkness. The
We've mentioned the water made of
About 10 lines up from the bottom.
But he did say a failure is water.
8, 9. Yeah. 9 lines up.
No, there he said the Gvura, Harav Yoldu a failure, Mayim.
Darkness is the kindness. You see it?
The darkness feeds, yes. But you see, Afela is even higher than, like you're saying, it's like Pella. Okay. Acceptable. So Zehu Dafka de Hester de Golos. It's not like Pshat, okay, a teacher. Remember we asked the question, I asked before the question, I said, I gave you a piece of art. In the art lies embedded even the etzem of God. But it's so distant from the art, you're not going to see it. How do you get there? You have to have something that causes you to dig so deep. You need something to jolt you into it.
But why can't extreme love do it rather than Saka Mina Tsar?
Well, he made the rule, he said, alright, Tsar is deeper than love. That's the klal. To human nature. Look, it takes, you have to earn $4,000 to compensate for the loss of $1,000. Why? That's human nature. Pain is deeper than you need more. You need more good to compensate for. Look, the fact of the matter is, when you're healthy, no matter how dedicated you are to God, you're never as appreciative than when you're sick and you know what you don't have. Why? I would say two things. Now, the Rebbe has a very interesting sikh on this. 1 second. The pashtus reason is human nature. We're human beings. We're very small. We're petty human beings. And frankly, we like our comfort zone. So when things are going well, you're not motivated. When it's competition, tell me. Anything ever happened to you, suddenly competition is something you wanted to do? It changes suddenly your timing and everything, right? And sense of urgency. Like he says, even in Basel Gani, he says, Bizbuz Eitzrus. Why? Only by the tzachon of a Mulchama, time of war. You see this clear. I saw it by the Rebbe. I saw it we hear it by the other Rabbeim. Time of war, they came out. So you could say it's human nature, but there's a Sikh in Shmini, Chelik Yud If you follow up on half of what you write, you're going to be a very...
You'll give it past next week.
So Shmini Chelik Yud Zayin, the Rebbe has a very powerful Sikh. It's from a Maimer from Pesach Chav Hei. The Rebbe said a Maimer V'nocha. I think V'nocha was. Maybe not. I think V'nocha. A very powerful Maimer. You know what the Rebbe says there? That why did God make it that the Helen brings out more than the Gili? So the Rebbe he says the answer there is because real Dira B'Tachtenim means that it has to transform Tachtenim. And the nature of Tachtenim is Helam. And you want the Helam itself to be part of the transformation. So there's nothing like it. The nature of the world is Helam, so the Helam itself is causing you to...
I think he talks about it. He talks about it.
Okay, good. But that's a separate discussion, but clearly that's the case.
Because there are people that come close to God when they have an overwhelming kindness given to them. They say,
I think, no. Remember, I told you can climb high. But why tzaddikim have to, Mashiach has to guide tzaddikim to have to lasovet tzaddikai b'tiyufta. Tzaddikim mamash. Because there's something that Shuvah does, even for a tzaddik, that he cannot have on his own. It's similar to why even tzaddikim come down to this earth. So it says clearly they don't need it for their avavir. On the contrary, there's more avavir in heaven. It's because what happens down here, the darkness, the concealment of godliness, brings out the etzem of God like nothing can bring out. That's what it comes down to. The real reason ultimately is because God is not bound by Gili and Helam. Not because our nature is such. God is not bound by Gili and Helam. So you want to really have his etzem. In Tanya, in Perek Lamed Vav, he says the higher worlds can be the purpose because they're Gili. They can't be high. They're a Yeridim Erpan of his Baruch, he says. Because much Gili, God is even more Gili. Tafka Tachtein, which has no virtue, reveals a part of godliness that no Gili can reveal. It's like the famous mashal of the Baal Shem Tov, which is a great mashal, where the two people come to the king, the pauper and the aristocrat. So the aristocrat comes in, and he sees all the king's delights and literature and music and art and everything. He studies it and he misses his appointment. Yeah. Tefillah La'ani, the pauper comes in, he doesn't appreciate it all, so he goes and spends time with the king. Sometimes, because you have Giluyim, you miss the boat. You miss the appointment because you're so enamored by the by the stations. This is why, the Zohar talks about astrology. Yeah. We have a lot of chassidus, even in Kabbalah talks about even reading hands and faces. But you don't never worship it. It's a station. Why celebrate a station when you can get to the destination? So God is what you want, not im chalecha fast. I don't want your Gan Eden, I don't want your Elam Abba, I want you. So and that's beyond Gilead and Helam. So the only place can get it. Giluyim don't let you get it, because with Giluyim you think you have it with your Giluyim. You think you have God figured out, on your terms.
But according to this, wouldn't the
This is the essence of what a Baal Tshuva is.
right. But if there's more energy, so to speak, in the a rocket booster in reaching the highest levels through pain and love, why when this fellow called you from California, you didn't tell him, you know what? Which a lot of people do have this reaction. Your father said he wishes you never did. Why don't you live your life and prove to him? Talk to him in a negative way. Your cry out. Do the negative. Fight the fact that he did. You prove it. Like a lot of people, millionaires make themselves. You know why I made $1 million? Why I was so successful? Because people told me I couldn't do it, and I'm fighting that my whole life. I'm going to prove to them that I could. You started in a positive vein. You said God's saying you matter. You started in a positive from.
Well, he has two things. Two things. My response is two double response. First of all, what you're saying to me is not Chassidish approach. And secondly, three things. Secondly, what you're saying actually feeds into the victim mentality. That the rest of your life I have to prove myself to my father for that piece of. And thirdly, above all, you don't need a person like that. You don't need
somebody else. You're living for somebody else.
Right, exactly. Hold on. A person like that does not need a catalyst.
Sure.
Their pain is so deep. You don't need to tell them, have more pain, go prove it. Their pain is their driving force. You need to show them how to take the pain and find what they need in their lives. Now, if some people feel it helps them get even, so to speak, and demonstrate, I think this person's father is so unhealthy, I think dead also by now, that it wouldn't make a difference. And then he comes back to his father and says, look what I did in my life, and the father doesn't even yawn. Then how is that going to help? I don't know if that's to me that would be. It may be, some people maybe that helps them motivate. I would not use it. I would use, forget about your father. You are a special person.
So you're using to bring him.
But it's pain. But it's the pain that's driving the person.
Oh, the pain is already there.
Yeah, you don't have to convince a person like that they're in pain. What you need to do is channel the pain for something positive. They shouldn't demoralize themselves.
A lot of people, the Holocaust victims, they said they raised families to revenge for Hitler.
Right.
That was the best revenge for Hitler was
Yes,
that, raising
that's
Jewish families. I don't know if that's a better idea.
I don't know if I think they say their revenge, but that's not what their motivation. Their motivation was to.
Afterwards, they said, "Look, that was our."
Yeah, no, that is our revenge. But yeah, no. A lot of them felt. A lot of them feel. They will say like this: it's not the revenge per se. It's that we owe it to ourselves and to those that perished, that we have to rebuild and not allow ourselves to die. They feel that type of more like that. In other words, it's not so much to show the Nazis, hey, who look what we did.
You wanted to destroy us, and we're here.
No, it's much more to show the people that died, to make that it was worth it. We did something with our lives. Many of them are driven just by that. But okay. So Hestra Golus, that's the root. So Dafka the Hestra Golus is Sharshe. That's root is in that superconscious. She says in the parentheses, so rather a few lines. This concealment of Golas is not like the regular, like the Gvura Shebechesed that he said before. It's not just regular filters in the regular flow of the cosmic order, B'Seider Hamshachas Ha'er, in the orderly hierarchy of the way energy is transmitted, Shemismayit, Madrega Madrega, that gets diminished from level to level. Shugam B'chinas Hester. That's also concealment. V'chein HaMesachim VaParsois, and the same thing with the curtains and the partitions. Shebeseider Ishtalshus in the cosmic order. Hamalimim Mastirim, that conceal and cover. We're not talking about that. Those levels of concealment, there's only a garment that's concealing the light. There's still Eir and Gili there. Remember, like you spoke before, the end of the previous chapter, Gvura Shebechesed, like you can't give them the whole flow, you filter it. Nashenkin Hester, the Golus. Interesting Golus used with a Gimel. The Hester, the concealment of Golus, the closure of Golus, Hu Cheshach Hatzmi. This is not just a filter, what's the word for the funnel? This is Cheshach Hatzmi. V'shashem b'chinas sasem b'etzem. This is strong stuff. And that's rooted, it's rooted in Sasam Be'etzim.
Selu Mazah.
When the Rebbe yelled, you know something, Eliezer?
Yes.
When the Rebbe yelled about Golus,
Yes.
nothing made him yell, only Golus could make him yell like that. Even, and the Rebbe loved God, of course, and Ava, Tanugim,
Right.
and had the deepest levels of Ava. But that type of, why God is concealed, what bothered the Rebbe, how could you conceal yourself? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. No, yeah, that part, that symptom's ready. But I'm saying, but the root of it, the Helam of Golus, the pain of that, for a person who knows what godliness is and sees godliness every day is hidden, is far more intense than any Gilui in the world. And trust me, and not that the Rebbe didn't appreciate the Gilui, not because you took it for granted. It just doesn't have that intensity of reaching a part of you that makes you. That's the Basal Gani, Bizbuz Eitzes, not Chanas. It has to be overcoming an enemy. You know, there was a time when a certain person in Israel would talk against Jews, the Rebbe would be Megala, the deepest ideas of Avos Yisrael. All the greatest sikhs about Avos Yisrael, what an Neshama is like, came because this fellow who used to attack Jews.
In response to that.
Yeah. So we used to say in our days, we say, we got to get him to attack Samach Vov and Ayin Beis. Because then the Rebbe will tell us what's going on, you know. We never were able to get that done. Had he said attack on Samach Vov Ayin Beis, I guarantee you the next Shabbos we'll get Giluyim. That would have been good.
Didn't even know it existed. Didn't even know it existed.
Look, the Rebbe Rashab says in Torah Shalom, he says these words, Shver Zogen, it's hard to say this, but I would say Yutis Kislev was like Zayis, an olive that doesn't give its best oil until you press it. When the Alter Rebbe was pressed, he gave the best oil. The main Chassidus came out afterwards. So you could say, why couldn't give it before? No, something about the
Opposition.
Yeah, and we're not talking about people who are out of weak. You know, sometimes you need you're weak, so you got to put your thing, a bar that you should jump over. We're talking even strength. It's clearly, it says, it's understood now when you know it's Sasam Betzim. Golus is rooted in a place that's Sasam Betzim. And through this, through what? Through the Helam of Golus, you have the revelation of core Chachmas Tema, core super consciousness. I think this is mamish revolutionary and mind-boggling. I must tell you, I'm ready to make a kula right now. I'll tell you why. Without mashka, this is just as good as mashka, better than mashka. I need foreign substance. We don't need foreign substance. A somersault.
Oh, a summer.
I'll tell you why. Because the secular world, when you talk about unconscious, superconscious, no way will they ever think that superconscious is generated through Kabbalah Sale and through this thing. They also say, we got to do something to open up those channels. Take LSD, I don't know, whatever, it's surgery. There's no, the concept that the motivation that should come from Yegiya it doesn't exist. It's a tremendous concept of deity. Because it's like, this is the answer. You want to open up channels of hitherto unprecedented channels, you need to break open a place that can only be broken through a Hester.
The whole of modern literature is built on pain, existential pain, from which comes on.
Not the
The whole romantic.
Yeah, but they don't know the dynamic. They don't know that they say because you're in pain, you write the best poetry and the best songs.
Brings out the best.
Yeah, but they don't. I don't think they have the level that I'm talking about.
No.
Yeah.
They have that idea.
No, for sure.
Squeezing.
Some of the best music and art all came either because of being a jilted love or something, or some other depression.
Maybe a blind black.
Some of the best stuff came from the most.
What they wrote was pain.
That's also, but they also wrote the best. Some of the greatest works ever written were people written in deepest depression.
Beatles last
Yeah, but I don't think that's the
Beatles
point
what?
of it.
on the roof.
But
It wasn't. Yeah. Look.
But the notion of being kvetch, bringing out.
That's
things.
that.
Yeah, you know that. Yes. No. I didn't mean that. I meant it as a psychological dynamic, like in the study of the unconscious and the super. That's what I meant. Like,
actually, there is
that's what I meant.
the newest.
That I wouldn't make a cool over what you said. Over this, I'd make a
But that's very different. That
But-
like
So think of this as a virtual cool. If anybody's watching, it's a little complicated.
But how do we get to that level?
You have to put food on the table for it to really be effective.
do we reach?
But it is,
do we
it's,
reach-
it's depressing how much pain you have to be in to do anything.
Yeah, but you know what?
So that should get you going.
I'm on this whole new field of psychology today. The fastest growing and the most the area of psychology is called what they call positive psychology.
Which is,
It was started by.
No, but I have a new chiddush here based on this. That the pain principle and the pleasure principle are one.
one.
Usually you see them as two separate things in marketing. You know, either get them to get it because they think they're going to die if they don't get it, or get them to enjoy it. Like
Right.
Coca-Cola is the pleasure principle. Seatbelts save lives is the pain principle. So here they meet. The pain reaches deepest in the pleasure.
Yes.
So not Coca-Cola, not seatbelts. Ayin Beis. That's it, my friend. Okay, let's continue. Well, we'll stop here. I just want to get to the close of a subject. Okay. Oh, he does say this now. Remember? By the way, let me just say the connection. Why I think he connects it? Because if you remember, back in chapter Kuf Pei Hey, 185, he said, "Aramimcha kelemelech is ke'ein hagdama to the mapola of Klippas Nega." Because in order to make a mapola of Klippas Nega, you need an chadash. So there he's already speaking about the negative. You need the deeper level to. That's mama's.
The first level of Chachmas Tabal. For the Shalosh Klippos, you need a deeper.
It doesn't speak about Shalosh Klippos. There it's like the deepest, whatever.
It's mentioned sometimes.
But now he's going to connect it back to Matan Torah. Remember, Ukamei Matan Torah, is Tchila Golus Mitzrayim. This idea, Matan Torah. That's why Matan Torah is Er Chadash, because Matan Torah comes as after the Gili of first had to be Golus Mitzrayim. Ukamavur b'Torah. Like it says in Torah, it explains in Torah, Davai Daber Elikim Va'era. In the Maimer Va'era, Shazel Lefi Sham Shachas Eira B'chinas Moti V'lei Moti. Because the transmission of energy and light from Matan Torah was Moti V'lei Moti. Moti means extending and not extending. Touching and not touching. It's the root of Ratzu Shuv. The Tchila Hu B'chinas Lei Moti. First, there was not touching; it was like withholding. Think of it like this: for you to shoot the arrow very far, you have to draw back. So the withholding, the resistance, creates a forward thrust. That's the key here. So first was Laimati.
Misraim before Matan Torah?
Huh?
Misraim is the Laimati before.
Right, exactly. Like the Kura Basel. Maybe he says that. Like the smelting with the iron furnace. How do you say translate Kura Basel?
Crucible.
No, Kura Basel. No, the oven, the furnace that hardens the metal, the iron. Good. Okay. So there you go. So here we go. Because that's. Oh, I said that already. I'm saying because the B'chinas Lei Mati not Tzimtzum Arish. Lei Mati in its roots is the first Tzimtzum, the original Tzimshu, B'chinas Sila Ka'er V'Hedrei. That's the removal of the energy, and it's Hedre means a lack of it. Not just removed, but it's like Hedre. Like he says in the Maimer Pasach Eliyahu, it's also Teira Vayera, rather. That's why it's called an empty space. It doesn't just say Cholol. It's an empty space because it's complete removal of energy, or light. Because the energy is not sensed there, even potentially. So as if you were there right now, you'd feel there's nothing. Even though there's a shimu and there's a impression and a trace, and even though be'etzem it's there, but it's only helam, but it's complete helam, like golos. Shezeu is gabris b'chinas hachesha v'helam ala er v'agili. That is the domination, the dominance, the overwhelming dominance of darkness and concealment on light and revelation. Like the removing the light because of the darkness. The darkness, in other words, Galil is rolling up, like
rolling out the light from the.
Or rolling up, maybe, rolling out or up. Probably more wrapping. It's like wrapping the light because of the darkness. The darkness, which is usually the opposite. Usually, light comes and here
dispels the darkness.
And here the darkness, the girl that he removed the light in the place of the cheshach, of the darkness. V'hainu in the parentheses. The darkness is not just the absence of light. Kimu cheshach be'etzem. Because if not, it wouldn't make sense. There's two opinions. If cheshach is just an absence of light, so as long as there's light there, what does it mean to bring cheshach? So you have to say you're talking about a metzius of something that when you move that in, the light moves away. In other words, it's as much substance as the light itself. It's fundamental cheshach. It's like vayomash cheshach by Mitzrayim. They felt it. There's two opinions. So this is talking the higher. This is not the lower level of chachmas tamar. That's only concealment relative to the, like Ishtalshlus, the stadium. This is talking about fundamental, and that's why it has the power. It's like Golus. It's a gili atzm. It's amshacha atzmis. That's fundamental concealment.
It's back the light from the face of the God.
It says Erein Sof Mamala Kol HaMetzias. Right? Erein Sof filled everything. Then God said Tzimtzum Atzmei. He concealed this light. So the Tzimtzum.
Rolling back the light.
Right, Tzimtzum is the cheshach.
Right.
Tzimtzum is the cheshach. The Tzimtzum
He's
roll back the light.
He's illuminating, isn't he?
No. Removed. Like here, the Tzimtzum comes and rolls the light back. It becomes a Igul Agadol. The light is now
Peels away.
right. Peels. Yeah.
He's making it there.
Yeah. And then comes that's Mati. Loy Mati rather. That's Loy Mati.
Is the Rabbi saying that the cheshach has a metzias? I always thought it was lack of.
There's two opinions. It's two levels. It's two levels.
And Chassidus holds, I thought.
No. It doesn't matter. Chassidus holds both. It's two levels.
Right. Which one's
On a
concealed?
certain level, is that way? On another level.
What kind of level of darkness is that? Such a strong
Yeah,
darkness.
two levels. And you could even say the level that cheshach is the mitzias. It's also due to the fact that God took away the light.
So is it
He-
higher chachmas timan, lower chachmas?
You could say that.
Which one is?
I just said that. Yeah,
The one that cheshach has metzias itself is.
the higher, the core, fundamental. You could even say cheshach that's a mitzias. That's cheshach atzmi. Even that. No, right. Even that you could say is also mitzad hedera air, because had God not wanted it, air would have been the dominant force. So you have to have the tzimtzum imposes it.
Can only be had.
No, it's okay. And then afterwards, he rolls back the cheshach because the air. That's the kav. Li is bechinas hagili. That there should be gili. So after the total concealment, then comes revelation. V'inyan v'achayis rotz v'shuv. That's the energy flows back and forth. Rotz v'shuv. Yearn and return. The mamayel lamata. Tchilahu v'lei mati. So rotz v'shuv. Mamat l'mayla could be, okay, from above down, first is laimati, first is removal, and then is immersion, return, which mati means, what do we say? Not how do you touch mati? Touching and not coming and not coming, like traveling. Coming and not coming. Mati means to arrive and not arrive, yeah. Like he says elsewhere. You want to say something?
I was just thinking, I mean, it's natural for light to overcome darkness. How strong is this darkness to be able to peel away the...
There's the whole chapter is about this now. It's coming from a place, because God is beyond light and dark. So there's a part that's completely Yoshus Cheshach Sis, as you said. He made darkness his hiding place. Darkness is the etzem. It's a very powerful. That's exactly the whole point here. That's very powerful, yeah. And reveals the core. Let's put it this way: when the power for tzimtzum comes from a deeper place than the power of gilui. For a wise person to speak is easy. For him to withhold is hard.
That's right. You see by many speakers. Nobody here.
7 o'clock.
No, I finished 7:02 by the way. That's why it says, Mila besala shtika b'trei.
It's worth more. It's more valuable.
Yeah. I told my brother when he was back in the shul there, I said to him, at the end of the year, ask for a raise in salary. Say you'll cut your speeches in half and they should double your salary. And it's commensurate. Proportionate to the shuv.
Meaning starting with the tzimtzum on down.
It looks like mamata lamayla starts first shuv and then rotze maybe.
What, Hashem is shuving tzimtzum?
No, mamata. We're talking about mile lamata. First is loy mati.
Who, but loy mati. But we said loy mati was the rolling back the darkness from the light, which was tzimtzum.
That's why I said the order first comes Mitzrayim and then Matan Torah.
Right, first darkness, then light.
Yeah.
First was
Light.
First was the tzimtzum.
No, we don't talk. He's not talking about the light before the tzimtzum. The process begins with darkness first.
It says
Process begins with darkness.
First
Process begins with darkness.
Had-
And that's we're calling Lamaila Lamata. I'm not sure.
What's it says? It says what it says. Chasheicha v'had nuhura. What's the lesson? Yeah.
That's the one. So, and that's Lamaila Lamata for some reason.
Yeah.
For some reason. Why is it?
He doesn't say in Samach Vav he talks about it. I have to look it up. Ratzei v'shuv is a lower level than Moti v'lei Moti. Ratzei v'shuv is already a real two-step process. Moti v'lei Moti is more in the root. It's more like Moti v'lei Moti are more like shifts, movements, like in the root, and Ratzei v'shuv is like the real source of time. Talks about it in Samach Vav. So I guess Ratzei v'shuv.
V'shuv up there is like Mati.
He says v'hu inyan Ratzei v'shuv. Here he's equating the two. And Momayl Lamatat, the Momayl Lamatat Chiluhu V'loy Mati. Lamata Lamayla first is Mati. That's what he's saying. Momayl Lamata first is Loy Mati. Bereisha Chashech V'adar Neher, right. Okay, Fiyerech HaShuv and commensurate, proportionate to the resolution, to the return, to the entry, Shuagil, Revelation, Kachu B'chinas HaRatzei B'tchila.
Meaning proportion to the loy Mati is the Mati?
Yes. No, proportionate to the Mati is the loy Mati. Is that what you just said?
No, I said just now.
Proportionate to the Shuv, Gili, that's how the Ratzei B'tchila. In other words, when you want a deeper Shuv, you want to go enter deeper, you want a deeper Mati, you need a deeper loy Mati.
So Shuv is the Mati.
Yeah.
Shuv. Gili.
So he says that when the transmission is only a reflection, then the Ratzei is only a concealment. Like he said in Stalshlos, just a concealment. His galus atzmi. When the Amshach is a core energy, the real the Ratzei betchila, meaning the yearning, which means the return inward, the not traveling, the not coming, the withholding is fundamental. Now this parentheses goes against Shtikl.
line. Just like in this last
Yes, yeah. But the content, he said it. He said it more or less before.
When he wants to be Izgala the Atzmi, you first need the Cheshach Velam Atzmi.
Yeah.
You should finish it first,
Yeah, because as soon as you have Giluyim right away. Yeah. Right. Yeah, we can finish the chapter already. I'll read quickly. So parentheses go. If you want to shoot a bow and arrow just a few inches, so you don't have to go back that deep. If you want to reach an etzem, you need to. If you want to be mamshech ha'atzmis eir, you can't mamshech it through gili. You need to come from a place that's very, very deep. Before he was saying the other way around, that the depth of the golus comes from helam ha'atzmi. Now he's saying because the gili that comes after golus is atzmi, that's why you need a golus. What can I say? Why do we need such a big golus? 2,000 years. Why not a golus like golus Bavel? 70 years.
Very powerful.
That's what it says sometimes, that lo yoda kitzam. What's the lashon? That the first golus they knew when there would be the ketz, and lo yoda itam, lo yoda kitzam. So that type of thing. It's It's all because of a helam atzmi. We learned this also before a little. Okay, Vatsimsim, now in the parentheses he says, Vatsimsim Arishan, he's explaining it now with the Tzimtzum Arishan. The Tzimtzum Arishan, Agam de Gili Akav Shach Churak Ha'ora Levad. So he's asking a question. You just said that Tzimtzum Arishan is a helam atzmi, so then the Kav should be a Gili atzmi. And we know the Kav is only Ha'ora. It's a question. You understand the question? If the Tzimtzum is like Golos, then after Tzimtzum should have come a major Gili. And that's Mr. She says, Yeshleim Pnei Shaya Tchila Sagili, Be'elam Kedim Shaya Yisavas Eshtalshlus, Hayitzarach Liz B'chinas Hadra Eir. First answer. Oh, I see this is going to be a little heavier than I thought. Okay. I don't know if we should continue here. Maybe I should continue after the parentheses. And then go back to parentheses tomorrow. Let's do after parentheses, because I see the parentheses is going to need its own biur. It's a whole sugya here. We'll go. I'm going to cover it. Let me go after the parentheses. 4 lines. He's going back to Matan Torah. That's why in the beginning there was exile, time of exile, and the dominance and control of Egypt. Because above was a complete histalkus achayis. Why? Because he wanted a gili of Matan Torah afterwards. No, this is fine. This is the bechin siluku ain't a helam lavad. Because siluk is not just concealment, a complete removal. The intensification of the darkness canal. Good. That's why there was the control of Mitzrayim, which was a very intense, a very difficult bondage, as it's known. And Dafka through this was Matan Torah. Same thing with our last Golas that we're in now. Is in a state of concealment. The Mashiach. This should be the revelation of Mashiach. That's revealed the supernal and fundamentally concealed Eden. Tainug. Eden is Tainug. What is that? The Meicha of Atika, which is Meichas Tima. Mamish is Abchinas Atzmis Chachmas Tima. That's the core of Chachmas Tima. Oh, this is a very solid chapter on Golas. Next time you're feeling bad about Golas. So thorough. Like, every pitch of Kem. Let's do the Kitzur, and the parentheses I'll do in the next class, I think, because the parentheses needs its own discussion. It's Tzimtzum. I would have answered the parentheses very simple. It's Tzimtzum addition, is not Golas. Tzimtzum addition also existed before Chet Tzadas. It's the creation of the world. So that's why the Kav is not Gili Atzmi. Golas, real dark Golas, that's what I would have answered. Maybe he's going to say that.
That's what I thought he was saying. It's Simpson Rishon. Why did you need such a big loy mati? As we just said, for the helm to conceal, you could, a small loy mati would have been good enough. I thought that's where he was going.
I think that may be the first answer. Correct. It may be the first answer. Okay, let's not speculate. Let me go to the Kitzur. Kitzur, Vadugm is who has to Ragolis. An example for this, for what? The core concealment is the root of the rebuke, is really Av Atzmis. The example of this is the Hester Golos, is the concealment of Golos. Mishuma Av Atzmis, the V'oyev Yaakov. Because why is there such a concealment? Because of the core love of the loving Jacob. The root of that is from the superconscious, that is the precious oil. Tev Hasasim B'Asem, the fundamentally concealed good. From that comes Atzmi Agolos. From that comes the core darkness of Golos, exile. And through the work that we withstand the manias, the impediments, like we said, through this transformation of the darkness, the b'tshuva, the nefesh habamis, through the tshuva of the animal soul, and the flesh and the heart and the flesh jubilate. Through that pella, that's be'etzem ufun chadas limud muhusa lakus. Oh, you add something now. Learning limud chadash, meaning learning the muhusa velakus, lost his love.
Not just the mitzias.
Right. Like the exile, Egyptian exiles in preparation for Sinai, delay mati what simtsum silike legamri. She'ein nirgish afilu b'keach. Leimati means withdrawal or what do you say? No movement, no restraint. Is it symptom the complete removal of the energy? Not that you don't even feel it, you sense it, you feel it even in potential. And that brings the arrival. Gilead atzmi the Torah. That's Matan Torah. Okay, that's the parentheses. That looks like the second answer. That the primary kavanah is there should be primis hakav. V'chein Golos Achel is Gili Eden Nilos Timal Lasid. And same thing, last Golos should be the revelation of the supernal Eden, concealed in the future.
You mean not just the paper arts of that?
Right. Okay. So we finished chapter 225, page 456, on top of 457. We still have to do the parentheses.
Yes.